Welcome to GearHeads. So today we are going to be working on the Miata again. I know it's been a little bit while. The last episode we replaced the heater core. That job actually went really well. Except to the very end where I was trying to flush the coolant out. I went to pull the drain plug on the radiator. Halfway out and halfway opened up, it seized and broke off because it's soft aluminum, I don't know. But shout out and thank you so much to Goodwin Racing and to OPL because they replaced my radiator for free for me under warranty, which is awesome. So I got the new radiator in here, and while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and install the Flyin Miata fan kit. They're low profile fans, and they have added ducting on there too to help try and make it more efficient because the stock ones actually work pretty well. By the way, something I'd like to mention, a lot of people when they add a thicker radiator will just add on those cheap electric fans like the ones you can get from eBay or CX Racing and stuff. Those aren't good fans, guys. They don't work very well, they don't flow as much air, and the ducting on them is terrible, or a lot of times you just put them on with zip ties and don't even do ducting. At that point, it's really not working well and you're not getting as much cooling as you need. The stock ones actually do work pretty well. The only problem is they are thicker. So we're gonna go ahead and install the thinner ones from Flyin Miata. They use Spall fans, which are very good fans. If you haven't heard of them before, look them up. But also, it's so stinking hot today. It's 107.
107, which is why I'm wearing a tank top, so don't judge me.
Yeah, if we're super sweaty in this video, like we haven't even started working yet, and I'm sweating so much right now. It's so hot.
Pretty gross.
But hopefully this job goes well, and hopefully the cooling goes well. For now, let's go ahead and get the new fans in and try not to die from heat. And I think we're gonna actually turn the fan on here, by the way, so if you hear like a little hum in the background, I apologize, but it is so hot, dude.
You're sweating.
I know, I'm like soaking wet. Ew. So we're gonna go ahead and start by taking out the intake first. Now, I don't have the stock setup intake, so if you want more help with that, we do show it in the radiator vid that I told you about. But it shouldn't be very difficult, it's just a few bolts holding it in, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull this one off. Alright, next step would be to go ahead and drain your radiator and drain all the coolant out of the system, but since mine already all leaked out, I'm going to go ahead and start pulling the hoses off. And I just got to get under the car to get the one down below. Oh, there we go. That one can just sit there for now. And now we just got two bolts holding the radiator in, and here's my alternative routing for that coolant hose, since ultimately I'm going to be using it to feed the turbo too. So here we got my new radiator. Shiny. Yay. And we've got my fan kit from Flyin Miata here. Okay, so in this baggie, we've got some hardware. And then we have this stuff, which I believe is to wrap around the edge of the fans to create a seal so that there's not air escaping by. And then we've got some pigtail plugs here. Oh, and then here we have what says a wiring kit for Spall fans. And the new fans. You can just feel holding this and looking at it. This is so much better than those really cheap ones you get on eBay. Ta-da!
Wow, it's really small.
Woo. Yeah, it's thin. Yeah, and there's my shroud. Let's take a look at the one last thing in here. The instructions. There we go. I've got my receipt. I've got my thank you. Thank you, Flyin Miata, for making all these awesome things. I bought this stuff though, they didn't send it to me. I'm just a loyal customer that buys from them all the time. And they always send some stickers, so that's nice. Alright, so I'm going to go over the directions. Matt's going to go get us some water because it's freaking hot and we're dying. And we'll figure out how to put this thing in, and it should be pretty easy. Okay, so they sent some washers. As far as the hardware goes, that's what I'm pulling out now. They got those washers, there's 8 of them, and then they've got... These are all like 8mm bolts. There we go. And there's 8 of each of them. And these silver ones here are shorter, and that's the ones we're actually going to use to mount the fan onto the shroud, and we're going to use the washers with those. And then the black ones there are going to mount the shroud to the radiator itself. So let's get these set on first, and let me see if these are the same size, because sometimes they send different sized fans or different sized motors, but these look exactly the same. So it shouldn't matter which one we put where. And then make sure you got your radiator facing up, and it would be a good idea to make sure your fan wiring is also facing up. You don't want to put this on backwards and have the wire facing down, because that's not going to help you out at all. Now this is pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to go ahead and slide a washer on each of these bolts and get them started. Alright, so the fans are mounted onto the shroud there. I used that electric impact, but I was only given it like a half a trigger. You don't need to tighten these down super hard. Just make sure they're nice and snug, but be careful you don't want to strip or pull the threads out of here. Now, we need to flip this over, and I'll just carefully set it on the radiator, it should be fine. And now we need to install this weather stripping stuff onto the corners here, and we're going to have to cut it to length for each of these. And the point of this is to make a very nice seal in between the shroud and the radiator to forces all the air to go through the fans. Okay, so I flipped it over and checked the fit. Flyin Miata actually leaves on the back side of the shroud here an open spot behind where all these mounting points are, and I decided just to send the weather stripping all the way across anyways, and I think it'll work fine. It just bulges just a hair right there, but that should work. And then the one other thing we need to do actually before mounting it is we need to flip this over one more time. I don't know actually if we should flip it over first. But let me show you, we've got these washers that need to go on there. They're actually more of a spacer than a washer. So they send these spacers, and the idea is they need to rest on top of the mounts here. And that's the one part that's going to be kind of hard to do actually, is get those to set in place and then set the shroud over and get the bolts started through them. We'll see, I guess. Might be a little difficult, but we'll figure it out. I'm going to use a single spacer on each of these, but they send enough for you to use 2 on each of them if you need to or if you can. And the idea is we want the seal from the weather stripping in here to keep the air going through the fans, but also the point of these spacers is that it raises it up just a little bit to give the air a more a consistent way to flow through, at least from what Flyin Miata says. They say if the fans are too close, you're causing an air spinning effect in here, and you're actually less efficiently moving air through the system, and you're not getting air through as much of the radiator surface itself. So anyways, that's the reason we're throwing those spacers on. So now I'm just going to go ahead and try and flip the shroud over and set it on there without moving the spacers. So let's see if I can do that. That's not going to happen. They're going to fall. So here's what I'm going to do first, I think. I'm going to get them all onto this side. And I'm going to just get this set over and get the bolts started through it, but leave them loose. And this is probably why they have you possibly cut the weather stripping off in these spots, because it makes it easier, but I can still do it, I think. So, all right, that's set over. So here's the other bolts they sent. These are the black ones, and they're a bit longer, and that's how you know that it is for mounting the shroud itself, because you need the longer reach. So here we go. Let me just get these things in. Yeah, these are plenty long enough that now that that's in a few threads, it's not going to move. The spacer will be held in place, and I should be able to lift the other side up and set the spacers in and then set it back down and do the same thing, hopefully. All right, Matt, can you set them on there and I'll peel this back and see if we can just lean it down without knocking them off. Here, now pull back right here. I've got my hands on these two ones. Okay. Pull back there and then set it down over and knocked one of them off. We can get the bolt started through it before it's set down all the way, before they move. So let me do that again one more time. And then aim. Yeah, if you can, aim. I'll get these two. Here, where's the other one? The fourth one?
Oh, that's right here.
Okay, so now let's try and aim for them, except for I can't see now. That's not great. Got it. So that's why they have it cut out right there. It's not, I checked to see if it was gonna bulge, and it didn't really bulge over just the stock mounts, but the spacers are wider, so it pushes them away a little more. That's okay though, they're all started. Here we go. Cool. All right, well, if you want to do it easier than the way I did it, I suppose you can just go ahead and cut the weather stripping right here in these spots so that it's not there in the way. But we got it. Cool, what do you think?
Looks good.
Oh, I think so. I think that looks nice. So here we go, we got the new setup here, right next to the old setup, and they're the exact same radiators as each other, so it's just the fans and the ducting that's different. Now you can see, besides the fact that this one's all nice and pretty and shiny and new, you can see that this whole thing is sealed up a lot better versus the stock fans. They've just got this light shrouding around, but there's space between them, there's space on all the edges all around, so a lot of that air can escape or go through. Or when the fans are trying to pull air through the radiator, it might pull air from through right here versus pulling through the other side of the radiator, which means that it's not working as efficiently. So the whole idea of this really is just to make the ducting work well when the fans come on, which is good when you stop in traffic or whatever. As far as getting great cooling while you're moving goes, this will actually still help a bit, but we're gonna have to add some more ducting around the front before the radiator to force air through there versus splashing away from it or whatever. But we'll get to that in a future episode. For now though, I think this looks good, dude. I like it. What do you think?
Yeah, it looks great.
I like it. I mean, I think it looks really nice. These fans look sweet, and this still is definitely quite a bit more low profile than that one is, which is awesome, which gives us more space under the engine bay. But anyways, it is super hot. Have you looked at your phone? What's the temperature right now?
109.
What?
109.
It's 109 right now? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, dude. No wonder we're dying in this metal barn. All right, well, like I just said, it is super hot, and then Matt actually has to leave in a while to take care of some stuff. So we're gonna tap out right now, and we'll be back to do the wiring stuff in a day or two and pick up there. Okay, so we're back. It's the next day, and it is finally not 107 degrees, which is great, huh, Matt? You feeling better?
Yeah, it's still 82 out.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It's 8:30.
It's nighttime now. So anyways, we're gonna go ahead and pick up right where we left off, and the next thing to do is set up all the electrical stuff for the new fans in there. Now, some people will modify and wire in to make the stock fans run in parallel to each other. There's a couple ways to do it, but Flyin Miata, when they send you these when they send you these fans, they actually send the whole kit, all the wiring stuff you need, and they send you a circuit breaker and a relay so you can set it all up properly and do it the right way so that they come on together versus how it was before when the second one would only come on with AC. Not to mention, I don't even have AC in this car anymore, so that would have been useless anyways. It would not have been coming on at all. So let's go ahead and get started with this, but one more thing is this is going to be very similar between the 1.6 cars and the 1.8s, like 90 to 97. There might be something a little bit, there might be a couple things that are very specific that are a little bit different, but if you follow along with this, it should be pretty close. If you go and buy the kit from Flyin Miata, they include instructions, they include all this stuff, so you should have everything you need to get it done and just follow the instructions closely. If you have an NB, I'm not sure how different it'll be. I think most of the wiring itself is still the same, but there might be 1 or 2 small differences. Either way, this is the 1.6 style, because even though we have the 1.8 engine, we've got the, you know, we're still on the stock harness from a 92. So let's go ahead and get started with this, and I'll just show you guys one step at a time. And first, I already did this. Go disconnect your battery, disconnect the negative, because you're gonna be messing with the positive connection on the alternator, and you do not want to mess anything up or zap yourself. So let's get started. So we're going by the Flyin Miata instructions here, and like I said, make sure if you get this, watch the video, and this will show you a lot of stuff, but make sure that you still at least go back and read the directions and follow each step carefully there too. Now the first thing I want you to do after disconnecting the battery, if you didn't do that, go do it. Make sure you do it. Next, mount the circuit breaker. So we're gonna put that up on the passenger side fender. Let me show you where it is. Okay, so if you look up above your passenger side shock mount right here, with my nice Bilstein adjuster there. Anyways, right to the left of it, there is the igniter. I guess that's my left, but for you it's probably on the right. Anyway, you're gonna take one of these nuts off. It's an 8mm. Okay, so here's the circuit breaker, and what Flyin Miata recommends you do actually is just slide it down right onto there like that, and just mount it up. I guess you're only using one nut to hold it on versus 2, but it's not like it's a big heavy part that's gonna go anywhere, so just make sure you snug this down good and you should have no problems. There we go. So after installing the circuit breaker on the igniter there, the next thing they want you to do is hook up the red wire and set it onto the alternator, and that's gonna run actually directly up to the igniter. So the first thing to start with that is they send you all the connectors and terminals that you need, and they recommend, I guess, using one of the yellow ones in the kit here, and I guess these ones you're not supposed to crimp. You're supposed to just slide in, and then if you have a heat gun, use that. I'm gonna try and use a lighter. And the deal is on these ones supposedly is there's the heat shrink itself on it, and then there's also some solder in there that's supposed to complete the whole connection, and you need for both of those to melt before you hook it up. So I'm gonna do that first, and then I just slid this conduit over it just because I want it to install and look clean. I don't really want to have a bunch of red wires and showing all over my engine bay, so hopefully I have some more of that sitting around for the other wires, but let's give this a shot. Man, that's some thick heat shrink because it's taken a while to really squeeze down. There it goes though. Okay, so after inspecting this, I can see that the solder in here actually did melt, so the connection is good now. But just, if you have a heat gun, use one. The problem with using the lighter is it fogs this up, and then you can't see very well. So if you have one, use one. If you don't, this should still work though. And when you're done, you want to go back and check all your connections anyways with a multimeter just to be sure. So let's go ahead and put it on my alternator, and this actually has an aftermarket replacement alternator in it, so I had to drill this out just a hair bigger because the stud was too big. So anyways, let's go ahead and take that off. I think it's a 13mm on this alternator. Did I say radiator twice or just once?
I think just once.
Just once? I hope so. Sound like an idiot. But anyways, yeah, it's a 13mm on this one, so let's take that off. There we go. Come on, there we go. Okay, and then I'm gonna actually put the wire back over and come at it from this side because that's the way I want the wire to run. So let me just slide that over. And that's about it. Just put the crush washer and the nut back on and tighten it down. All right, there we go. So this conduit and the wire here is actually longer than I'm going to need, but I'm gonna run it underneath this stuff to come up to the igniter. All right, and then I wanna run it over here next to the stock one actually, or if I can, I'll get it underneath it. Let me see if I can shove it underneath. There we go. Oh, look at that. That's gonna be a clean install right there. Using this and going underneath the other one. Looks factory, bro. Okay, so I'm actually only gonna need about that much length of wire, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut the conduit back shorter to where I need it and cut the wire back shorter to where I need it because I'm not interested in having a bunch extra. Like right there should be fine because then the eyelet will be on it. So, all right. Now I just gotta strip that and put the eyelet on. That's why you want to use a heat gun if you can. Yeah, you can see it turned it black when I was using the lighter, but if you get a rag, you can actually wipe that soot.
If you get a yellow rag, it turns it to yellow.
Is that what I'm doing? Turn the yellow connector back to yellow. And then I can actually see in here now that the solder melted down there, so this thing should be good. It's just gonna be hard to see on camera, but I can see right in the front of where the metal is up here, down here, you can see the solder melted down. Okay, so let me slide this back into the conduit and pull this guy up. Ooh, that's a tiny crush washer. All right, and then this is just a 10 millimeter. Don't need to make it that tight, just get the crush washer down and get it snug. There we go. Yeah, that's good. All right, let me get a zip tie and put that down there, and we'll move on to the next thing. There we go. Nice and tight. There we go. So now that we've got the circuit breaker and the first electrical connection to that installed, we're gonna run another one over, and it's gonna be going to this relay. So let me just show you the relay and where it's gonna go and explain that a little bit. And then Flyin Miata in the instructions says they sent a few different red wires. They only sent one, at least to me. Maybe they expect you just to cut it to make more, because like I did here, I didn't need that whole length. I just cut it shorter, and I have enough wire to make it over to the relay here. So this is where it's going to be down here. Come on down and I'll show you what's going on here. So Flyin Miata sends you a small little bracket, and you're supposed to pull this bolt out and then mount, and then the other one would mount in hold in space right here next to it, which is fine, but I took the AC out of my car, so I actually don't need this anymore. This is your air conditioning relay, by the way, so that's why I don't need it anymore. So what I'm actually going to do, instead of putting the bracket and putting it in next to it, is I'm just going to take this relay out, and then this is the old fan switch, and that was also part of the AC system. And what I should be able to do actually is unplug this down here on the harness, pull this off, and then all this will just come out, and that'll give me more space down here. I don't need these extra wires hanging around. I don't want them if I don't need them. So anyway, I'm just gonna pull that off, and then I'm actually not gonna mount it yet, just because you'll see on the bottom of this relay here, there's 5 connectors on there. We're gonna be using 4 of them, not 5. I don't know if you can see it on camera. It's kind of hard to make out, but there's a different number on each of these. This is 30, this is 85, this one is 88, the middle one is 87A, and the top one up here is 87. We're gonna run a hot wire, which would just be a positive wire, from that circuit breaker over here on the red wire, and we're gonna run it over to the number 30 on the relay, which is this vertical one on the bottom. This is just a 10 millimeter. Oh, there we go.
Nice.
All right, and that can just hang out right there. So we don't need this anymore. I'll hold on to it though, just in case I do decide to install air conditioning again someday. So to connect to the circuit breaker on one side, you're gonna do the same thing you did for the alternator, and the other side, strip it, and then use one of the yellow eyelet connectors, which is, like I told you don't crimp it, you just heat shrink it or use a lighter to melt it down, and then make sure you get it far enough for the solder. And then this here is actually one of the terminal connectors. So on this side it's opened up for the wire to go in, and then this side it's like a little connector, and it'll slide right on to there like that, and it clips right in, which is nice. But this one, supposedly, I guess you do crimp and heat shrink. So we're gonna do that in a second. Okay, so something to note, let me wipe this off so I can get the black charcoal off of the connector here. If you're not using a heat gun, like I said, it makes it foggy so you can't really see through here. But if you, when you're melting or when you're heating up the connector, if you hold it with the this part facing downwards versus upwards, you can see, because what happens when that solder melts and comes through, it'll roll downhill, so to speak, and it comes down onto the connector. So here, you can see it. Let's bring it down here and show you. All right, so you can actually see right there on the connector, the solder melted and came down into it. So that's exactly what you want. I did look close enough at the other ones. The solder did melt down. It just didn't pass over because I wasn't leaning this down forward when I did it. So anyways, that's good. There we go. All right, and then this is just my own personal preference. I'm gonna see how long this needs to be, and then I'm actually gonna slip some heat shrink over this just because I don't want this lone red wire floating around down here. I don't think it looks great. And I'll get about that long. So let me cut it. And there we go. And then I gotta put that other connector on it, and when I'm done with it, it'll kind of go right around there. All right, now be careful when you're crimping this, because what I just did is you're supposed to crimp it right here, but it actually slid the connector out the front, which is really crappy. So I'm gonna have to aim again and make sure you're crimping right over the middle. Look for the metal portion here of the connector. It probably happened because it slipped out already when I was test fitting it onto the relay, but still, that seems dumb to me. There we go. All right, and then that one was gonna go on to number 30, which is this one right here. Oh, well, it's hot. Careful, don't burn yourself. There it is. All right, so that's how that's gonna go as a demonstration. The rest of the ones we put on here, we'll be putting another one on this port, and this port right here. And then this thing's gonna mount up right there. So next, Flyin Miata sends a dual lead wire where they're kind of connected in the middle. I actually just stripped them and pulled them apart from each other because they're going to be going different directions. So one of them is brown, the other one's red. I'm going to set the red one down for now, and we're going to go ahead and start putting the ground on that's going to run from the relay. And we're going to have to find a good ground over on this side of the engine to hook up to. You're not going to want to hook it into the bracket where the relay mounts. That's not really a good thick piece of metal. We'll try and find something on the chassis that works better. This ground wire is going to be going into the relay, as is the next red wire that we're going to be using. So by now, we showed you, we're going to be hooking that up into the one of these crimps. So same thing as the other ones, same thing as that last one. Just go ahead and strip it, put it in, crimp it, and then heat shrink it. So I'm going to go ahead and connect the ground to terminal 86 on the relay here. And now let's go ahead and try and find a good ground over here. So right down here below the charcoal canister, you'll see this line that goes from it's part of your evaporator system that goes to the gas tank. Anyways, there's a bolt holding the bracket down right there. And it's very close, right underneath actually, where the relay is going to be mounted. So I figure we'll just go ahead and put it right there. And it's right into the frame here, so that should be a good ground. And since it's so close, I just measured how long I want it to be. It does not need to be very long. And you know, if for any reason I need to relocate it, I can always lengthen this wire by crimping a connector back onto it and doing it that way. But this should be good. Okay, I've just thrown some heat shrink over this. First off, because it's a ground, so I'd like it to be black and not this mix of brown and red. And then I accidentally messed up the eyelet connector I was supposed to use because I forgot the red one is the same as the yellow ones that Flyin Miata gave me. You need to melt them on, not crimp them. I crimped it and it messed it up. So at least I have some other connectors sitting around, and the truth is these will work just fine. Just crimp it well and you won't have any issues. And then I'm just going to run some heat shrink right around over that yellow connector to pretty it up a bit. There we go. And then for now, this is the bolt that I had taken out, and I'm not gonna put it in with the ratchet yet or with a wrench because we're actually gonna be adding one more ground down in this spot. So like I said, I'm just gonna go ahead and set it down here so I don't forget and don't lose anything. Not that I probably would, but you know. We will have another ground going there in a little bit. Okay, so next we would be running the other part of that dual lead wire that Flyin Miata gave us to one end onto the relay down here to number 85 on the relay, which is just the one directly across from the last one I put on there. So you can see I've got the one coming in here from the circuit breaker, and then that's the vertical one, and then I've got the one on the side going to the ground, and then directly across from it is the one that I'm going to hook in, and that is actually going to run over to the yellow wire, which is this guy here, for your main fan in the factory wiring system. And so basically what's going to happen is this will take, I mean, it'll still send power down to this fan on this side, but this will also act as a switch sent to the relay to turn the second fan on, and then this is all this stuff over here is just extra power to run that separate fan so that you're not overrunning these wires with all the current for both fans, because you'd probably have problems if you did it that way. Secondly though, I do have a quick question. Flyin Miata, if any of you guys happen to see this video, I would like to know why you sent a dual lead wire running one to go to the ground there and the other one to go all the way over to, well, I mean, not that the ground had to be there, I suppose you could put it over here if you wanted to, but why send a dual lead wire when the wires are running to totally different places, potentially? I don't get it. But anyway, I'm actually going to use my own wire here. It is a slightly thicker gauge than what they sent, and the dual lead wire they sent also wasn't as long as I'd like, because I have to run from this relay, which pretty much, according to their directions at least, is going to mount here either way. And then you're expected to run all the way across over here. Now I don't want to run it behind the radiator. I would prefer to make it clean, a nice clean install, and run it up over through the top here and hide it eventually when I put a little ducting over in this area. It'll be hidden underneath there, and for now it'll just run across. Either way, I think that'll be a cleaner, nicer install, and I didn't have enough of that wire, so I just have some wire here that I've had forever from the hardware store. What is it? 14 gauge wire is what I'm using. That should be fine. Alright, that'll be long enough. So I'll just cut it here, and then we're gonna go ahead and use one more of those red connectors that they sent here and hook it up to the relay on the other side like I just showed you. And then once we get that done and run over here, I'll show you guys how we're gonna hook it into the yellow fan wire from the factory harness.
Which one is that going into?
Number 85. And the middle one, 87A, is going to be unused. We'll get to this one in a little bit. And then, oh hey look, I've got all my tools in the way of where I want to run the wire. Isn't that nice? That's okay. For the moment, I'll just run it straight across this way. Just try and unwind it too. It's got all the loops in it. Okay, so I'm going to cut back a little bit of this wire shielding on the factory one here because, here, just pull the wires out of the way and cut right into it. Okay, so here's how this one's gonna go. We're going to, okay, just pretend that this isn't dragged across the front. It's gonna be eventually, I'm gonna run it over here underneath the bumper cover here just so it's hiding. And then it's gonna come down over here in like this way. Now what I'm going to do is run it in and connect it with a connector to the yellow wire. Flyin Miata said they sent a blue butt connector, and I don't know if maybe they forgot to pack it. It's possible I might have accidentally just lost it. Maybe I dropped it and didn't even notice. But either way, I have some electrical connectors, so that won't be a problem. I'll go ahead and just put it on there, or we can even solder it if we want to. Don't cut it too close to either side, because you want to have some room to work with. There's that one. And there's that one. And then I've got a yellow and a blue crimp connector here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and see which one ends up fitting better. I think actually the blue one should work well. You don't wanna go too big because you don't want these slipping out on you later. That's no good. It's no fun for anybody. Actually, you know what? I'll crimp that side since they're together and they're in there nice and tight. There we go. At least that'll hold them in place pretty good. And I'll slip this one in all the way. There we go. That sounded like that was the butt connector that popped, but that was actually my knuckle. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Well, that's spliced in, and I'll move that later. All right, that's better. Okay, so we're getting closer being done with the wiring. We're gonna go ahead and put in the passenger side fan, which is gonna be right here. And we're going to put this ground that's on here into the ground spot where we ran that ground from the relay down here. And then this red wire is going to get hooked up with the relay. Now this is the harness I believe that Spall sells with the fans. And it's got a connector here to run a wire to it. So if you wanted to, you could run a red wire connected to the relay here, and then crimp it, you know, crimp a wire onto that coming off, and then crimp it into here. But that seems like an unnecessary amount of work to me, because where this thing's gonna be sitting down here, this is plenty long enough to make it to the passenger side fan. So I'm actually going to just cut the red wire here, strip it, and I'm gonna go ahead and put this last yellow connector that Flyin Miata sent onto this wire, and I'll just plug that straight into the relay. And like you can see here, that's plenty long enough to make it to the passenger fan, like right here. It doesn't even need to be this long, but so I'm gonna go ahead and just do that real quick, and then I think we're getting close to being done here. There we go. It's all mounted up. So I think the next step's gonna go ahead and drop the radiator and fans back in, and then we'll need to fill it up with coolant and flush it, or not flush it, but get all the bubbles and stuff out. Okay, so we didn't drop the radiator in yet, but we found something else that was not in Flyin Miata's instructions. If you look on both of these connectors, they're both male connectors, and the thing we just wired in over here for the passenger side is a female connector. And Flyin Miata did send 2 of those, which is nice. But what they did not say in the instructions is that what we went over before, we showed you had to run the red wire into the factory plug here. Well, the factory plug does not plug into the Spall fan because they're both male. They're both the same design of connector, actually. They're like the same shape and everything, but this is a male and this one's a male. So we're actually gonna have to just go ahead and undo what I did here. I'll have to unwrap that electrical tape and cut both of these, and we're just gonna have to wire in the new connector instead of this one in its place. And then we can go ahead and drop the radiator in, and everything should plug in with that. All right, for this, I'm just gonna yank these out. Oh, there we go, that worked. And then I'll go ahead and just cut that black one to the same length. Boop. And I'll hold on to this in case I need to use it again if I want to hook up to another fan sometime. All right. So the Spall connector already had this butt connector on it that I was able to actually just crimp both of these into, and they're snug. I'm pulling on them, not coming off, so that's good. I'll go ahead and heat shrink this real quick, and then I'm actually gonna just have to grab a little connector out of my toolbox to hook up the grounds. That's okay though. Okay, so I just cut that connector off of the ground wire on the Spall connector, and then strip that one and strip this one. Whoop. And the factory fan wiring is a considerably smaller gauge, you can kind of tell. So I picked a connector that would fit them both, because you don't want to go too big and have it slip off of the smaller one, obviously, but at the same time, it still needs to fit the big one. So. Okay, that should be solid. Slide this bad boy over the top. Heat shrink that down a bit, and then I'll probably wrap them together with some electrical tape, kind of like I did on the factory setup. There we go. All right, well, that should be enough to plug the fans in and then test them out and see if they work. So for now, I'll just pull this out of the way. I don't want to snag anything or mess any of the new wires up when I slip that new radiator down into place. Okay, now if you're curious why that heater hose is routed that way, just go back and watch the engine swap videos, and you can also learn how to swap an engine. It's because reasons. I needed that long hose there for other reasons. Anyways, and for right now, it'll hold that red wire back there. I'll probably get some, for that red wire, I'll probably get some conduit to just cover it up and clean it up and make it prettier under here, but for now, that'll work. And Matt and I actually are not done doing stuff with this at the moment. Oh, hey, look, I'm bleeding. Huh. Look at me, I bleed from my car. But anyways, Matt and I aren't done working on some things on this, so we're actually not going to fill it up with coolant yet. But at this point, make sure you put your upper, lower radiator hose back on, fill this thing up with coolant, and then we're gonna test the fans out before you start the engine up. I mean, if you want to do this before you even put coolant in it, that's fine. But we're gonna show you right now how to test the fans. So we gotta plug them in real fast, first thing, duh. Also, you know, I'm gonna clean this wiring up a bit more. We got, for example, way more wire here than we need. That only needed to be about 4 or 5 inches long, not 1.5 or 2 feet. But for the moment, that's okay. Like I said, we're just gonna go ahead and we're gonna test these out and see if it works, and we're gonna button everything up pretty and nice later. But this should be how you install the radiator fans. So let's go ahead and test them out. And I talked about this earlier in the video, but you really want to make sure that the fans are blowing the proper direction. So come on, actually not come on to the driver's side yet. We gotta go to the back, and I'm gonna go ahead and hook the battery back up because we have no power right now. So let me do that, and then we're gonna come over to this diagnostics box. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the keys in the car and turn it into the on position, and then come to the diagnostics box. And the battery's hooked up, so we have power now. And your diagnostics box should be mounted on a little bracket here. I don't know, previous owner of the car literally left it just hanging out down here. So if you look in here, you will see, whoopsies. You'll see the diagram up here, and you'll have a ground, which is this guy right here. And then there is a TFA, and that's the coolant fans switch for this here. So I'm gonna go ahead and slip one end of this into the ground, right there, and then I'm gonna slip the other end into the TFA, which is 3 over from the right here. There are the fans. See which way they're blowing. Oh yeah, they're definitely blowing back this way. There's no air. I can feel the suction. Reach on both sides of the radiator, by the way, because I can feel the suction on the front of the radiator, and I can feel the air moving on the back of the radiator. And man, these things move a lot more air than the stock ones do. I can tell already. Wow. Way more airflow. Awesome. Oop. I think they might, oh, there we go, now they're off. I was like, oh, maybe they're gonna stay on until I shut the key off. Well, there we go. I'd say that's tested and confirmed. Both of them turn on, and both of them are blowing the proper direction. If for any reason you do that and both the fans or one of the fans are blowing the wrong way, it's just wired backwards. So you can literally just switch the wires on one of these if you want to. And then that'll make it run the proper way. So anyways, awesome. We gotta button all this stuff up and make it prettier, but you guys don't need to see how to do that. I think you can figure it out. Choose the best way for you to zip tie and hide things and make it all look pretty. But we got other work to get onto soon on this thing, so I'll pretty it up later and fill it up with coolant later. But for now, this is good. I'm really happy that this is done now. All right, well, I think that kind of wraps it up on this one. Now, my thoughts on this kit, it's a Flyin Miata kit, and I want to say this before I say anything else. I love Flyin Miata, so thank you guys so much for making all the awesome parts for these cars. That being said, the written directions, at least to me, were kind of confusing. I don't know why. I could look at the wiring diagram, and that made pretty good sense to me that they included on the directions, but I was trying to follow the instructions step by step because I was making a how-to for all you guys. So anyways, it did go pretty well. It actually is quite simple. I just, I hadn't actually done this before, so figuring it out for the first time and trying to do this video at the same time made things a little difficult. But I'm really happy with the way it turned out. The ducting in here for the fans on the radiator is really nice, and I like the aluminum piece that holds it up. Those spall fans are awesome. They move a ton of air. So I'm really happy with this setup. I think it's gonna be great, and it's definitely gonna help keep the car cooler on all the freaking hot days we get here. And when I'm climbing, you know, hills in the canyons or whatever fun I'm having if I go to the track or whatever. So I'm excited, and this is really cool. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you very much again to Flyin Miata for making awesome parts. We appreciate that, and thank you very much again to Goodwin Racing and OPL for replacing the radiator under warranty. So this is really just one big shout out to all the companies out there making Miata parts, huh?
Yeah, we're not even sponsored by any of them.
No, we're not sponsored by any of them. That'd be nice though, wouldn't it?
It would be nice.
That'd be super nice.
I hope they're watching. Probably not though.
Probably not. So we had fun making this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We've got more projects to come very soon on this thing. Obviously, we've got to wrap a few things up in here. There's actually a few small things since the engine swap that I've got to go through and work out. Just small little bugs, wiring. For example, my fans actually weren't coming on all before. I think I know why. So if any of you would like an update on that, I'll fill you in on that stuff later. So just ask in the comments for it if you want to see an update on the little things we're doing in here. But it's not too much. And I promise, the turbo build is coming soon. Finally. I hope.
We'll see.
Well, I mean, we've had problems literally every step of the way. So hopefully it's coming soon.
Alright, you guys, don't forget to keep your eyes peeled for more videos. We got more Mustang videos coming up, as well as videos on the Volkswagen as well. So, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram and Facebook, as well as our store. I think we still have some shirts left. We need to start selling, and stickers and things like that.
Yes, we still have some. Come buy them.
Alright, you guys, thank you so much. Don't forget,
Keep wrenching!